Good morning, lovelies. ZoëTwoDots here, and today's video is about me. Who am I and what am I outside of Pokemon Go? So the channel over this year has had a pretty crazy amount of growth, and I kind of realized that a lot of you probably don't know much about me outside of the Pokemon Go videos. That's all that this channel has been mostly centered around this year. So who am I and what do I do? So let's get into a little bit about moi. So hi, I'm Zoe, I am 25 and I'm from Newcastle, Australia. I live here in Newcastle with my partner Alan and our two cats Will and Cinnamon. Will is the big boy and Cinny is the little girl. The way that you can tell these ones apart is Cinnamon is considerably smaller than Will, but she always has a really concerned look in her eye, and her tail kind of acts like a little in-game navigational arrow. It always points over her head in the direction that she's going. These two little kitties are rescue cats and they are a cross between Bengal and Tabby. So they're quite active, they're quite cute and snuggly and very affectionate. Alan and I have been together for 7 years. We've been engaged for 4 years. We met at EB Games actually. He was a manager at another store and my friend worked with him, so I would sometimes see him when picking her up from work. We had and have a lot of similar interests in humour, so naturally everything kind of fell into place for that. My family heritage is Polish, with all 4 of my grandparents hailing from Poland. They immigrated to Australia after World War II. I actually used to speak Polish as a child, but being a stubborn kid, one day I decided that I wasn't going to speak Polish anymore, and my parents and grandparents didn't force me. I kind of wish they had, because that'd be a pretty useful skill now as an adult. But even though I'm Aussie by birth, my cultural upbringing was very Polish. Lots of Polish food, Polish Christmas and Easter traditions, even Polish church if I happen to stay over at my grandparents' on a Sunday, which, as you can imagine, for a bunch of kids, isn't the most exhilarating way to spend a Sunday, but if that Nan wants to do it, we're gonna go do it. Touching on church just briefly as well, I'm not personally a very religious person. If there is something bigger in the universe, happy days. If there isn't, also happy days. I'm fine either way. I'm kind of on board with the, you want to do your beliefs, you go for you, as long as you're being a nice person, that's all that matters. So, but I don't go to Polish church anymore. Of course though, if I was at Nan's on a Sunday and she wanted to go, of course I would accompany her. I'm the oldest child in my family. This is my youngest sister, India. She's about 4 years younger than me. And I think a few people got confused or thought that I was a Kiwi because my mum is living in New Zealand, but that's actually a recent move. We all grew up here in Australia and she just moved over to New Zealand recently. Growing up, I was very envious of council workers because from my mind, in a child's eye, watching them as I drove past in the car, they got to dig holes all day for a job. And I loved nothing more as a 4-year-old than digging holes all day in the backyard. That dream slowly faded into the love for dinosaurs and archaeology, and I wanted nothing more than to be an archaeologist until Mum told me that you can't really make any money being an archaeologist and you need money to eat and to live. So that kind of squashed away that desire to be an archaeologist. When I was in primary school, I really wanted to be a vet, and I was still kind of mixed in with wanting to be a vet and then something else creative. I was always very much into art and science as a kid, and academically that's kind of where I excelled, was in art and science and like logical thinking and problem solving. Realizing that to study to be a vet you need to study for about 7 or something years, I wasn't really that keen on 7 years of study. Started to focus more on the creative side of things that I was interested in. So after school, I started my study in visual communication design, which is just essentially graphic design. So this was a 3-year degree at university, and straight after this degree, I was really lucky enough to score a full-time job in graphic design. And that was my full-time job before YouTube, working mostly on catalogs, photography, websites, things like that. I learned a little bit of video editing at university, but most of my video editing skills were self-taught and also from a friend giving me kind of like the basic starter foundation of how to get into video editing. Mostly Google was the answer to all of my questions. I was lucky enough to be familiar, of course, with the Adobe suite of programs because of graphic design. So I was familiar with, the menu and the layout and certain skills required for Premiere Pro. But a lot of the nitty-gritty bits and pieces were answered by the handy and ever faithful Google. So my nickname, ZoëTwoDots, comes from the way you actually spell my name. So Zoe with 2 dots above the E. These dots are known as an umlaut. And they make the E sound. So technically without the dots, my name would be Zoe, the same as you would spell toe or foe. If you put the 2 dots above the E, it would be toey or foey. But essentially that's what the 2 dots do, they make the E sound. And the origin of my nickname was that in Australia, it's really customary for your final year at high school, the year group designs a jersey and you get your nickname printed on the back of it. and all I wanted was just Zoe with the 2 dots above the E. Unfortunately, the printing company could only do standard letters and numbers, and in a kitchen rant to my mother, I said, all I want on my jersey is just Zoe and 2 dots. And that is the origin of my nickname, ZoëTwoDots. Just spelling it out like that, and it's come quite in handy for certain, digital usernames when you can't have special characters. I can spell out my name as ZoëTwoDots. A lot of you guys asked about my music taste, and oh boy is it all over the shop. I will listen to just about anything. I'll listen to anything from ABBA to Metallica, genuinely. I have a very broad taste in music, and there's only certain things that I find truly displeasing. But my absolute favorite genre is 90s R&B and 90s pop, specifically the 90s. I cannot escape the 90s. I do generally listen to just a handful of songs from almost every artist, just picking my favorite bits and pieces and not fully committing to listening to one artist. But if I had to pick a favorite artist or group, it would be Fleetwood Mac and Lady Gaga, because I fairly consistently listen to all of their stuff. Okay, so the bow. I started wearing bows in high school. I know I often wore like a lot of hair accessories as a kid as well. I think that's kind of like standard kid headwear, but in Australian high schools, everyone has to wear a uniform. There's a standard school uniform at every school. So usually the way to express your personality through fashion is through how you add on to that uniform without breaking the school rules. So at my school, hair accessories were allowed, so the bows kind of naturally formed part of my identity and my expressive personality. It got to the point where if I wasn't wearing a bow, people would ask if I was okay, because it had become so synonymous with how I dressed, and it was just synonymous with my personality. That still sometimes actually happens today if I'm not wearing a bow. But to be honest, there's no particular reason, I just like them. I feel like I look a little bit like I'm a fairly short person. The bows add a little bit of extra height, I feel, to myself. They're fun, they're colourful, they're easy, and I think it just makes my hair sit a little bit nicer, to be honest. I like bows, that's kind of the short answer. As for Pokemon, I don't really remember a time in my life without Pokemon. That was a very, very early part of my life before Pokemon even existed. So Pokemon came out when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I started watching the anime on TV and collecting the Pokemon cards. One Christmas, I received a Game Boy Advance, and I started playing the original Pokemon games on that console. Played through every generation of Pokemon. I did skip Gen 3 as a kid, but I played back through Alpha Sapphire as an adult. And I always just, I think, loved the design, the story, the energy, the game, everything. I always just really gravitated to Pokemon as a series and as just a collectible, as a brand. I've always enjoyed Pokemon. It's always been a solid thing that I've enjoyed. Pokemon Go for me was huge because I always wanted to get into gaming on YouTube, but I didn't really have the equipment or the know-how to do it. My channel actually started as a vlog and travel channel. So when Go came out, it was incredible because all I needed was my camera and my phone to get started. Pokemon Go itself has also helped incredibly with my mental and physical health. I went from never walking on my lunch breaks to almost being back late to my desk after a full hour of Pokemon hunting on my lunch breaks. I mentioned in my PAX panel that the last few years have been pretty difficult for me mentally, and they have been. I've been going through some extreme challenges, some that most people will never have to face, and I hope will never have to face in their lifetime. These last few years have been incredibly difficult for me, for a number of reasons, but those stories are for another time. The main thing is that Pokemon Go and the community became a critical part of helping pull me out of those low slumps and helping me escape the negativity that I was dealing with. I also often get asked, do I play any video games outside of Pokemon Go? And the answer is absolutely yes. Over my years, I have clocked up thousands of hours of gameplay, which may sound like a lot, but I don't really watch TV or movies unless there is, an upcoming release that I'm super excited for. I don't, come home after work and watch TV. I play video games. The last time I turned on free-to-air TV was in May for Eurovision, and the time before that was in 2017 in May for Eurovision. Like, I just don't watch much TV at all. With video games, some of my first ever games were Mario Kart and Mario Island on the Game Boy, also Croc on the PC, Pokemon of course, and Halo and Jet Set Radio Future on the Xbox original. My absolute favorite gaming series outside of Pokemon is BioShock. That game series is stunning and gorgeous and borderline flawless. It is such a wonderful game series. If you've never played it, I highly recommend that you check out BioShock. And aside from that, I also love Skyrim, Ni no Kuni, Animal Crossing, most of the Mario titles, and much more. I do genuinely play a lot of games. Another thing that I do kind of every other week, it has slowed down a little bit because I've been so sick after all the traveling, but I think that I do pretty much every second week or third week is donate plasma or blood. I'm pretty big into being a blood donor. It was very competitive at our school. There used to be a program with the Red Cross Blood Service and schools where schools would compete to see who could get, you know, the most blood donors. So I started donating when I was 16 and I haven't really stopped. As I said, I did have to take a little bit of time off because you can't donate when you're sick, but I really wanted to hit 50 donations this year. I got to about 30 something donations, so hopefully I can hit my goal of 50 next year. But I've always just kind of done it because it's not something that hurts me, it's just a little needle. If you're interested in like plasma and blood donating as well, I have been meaning to make a video on how to do it and how the whole process goes down. Essentially, it's fairly painless, and my reasoning for it is realistically one day I'm probably going to need a blood donation or a plasma donation or some sort of life-saving medical treatment. And if I'm currently healthy enough to help other people with that, I should. And then, you know, I'm kind of putting my investment into, you know, giving as much plasma and blood as I can now, and then when I need it later on, it's going to be there from other people to help me out too. So kind of paying it forward in advance. Other interests and favorite things. Let's jump into, let's do like a little hit list. Favorite movies of all time: Jurassic Park, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. I know they are kind of like main blockbuster titles, but I love them incredibly. Jurassic Park especially, that is probably hands down my favorite movie. Original, Jurassic Park, love it. For TV shows growing up, Cardcaptor Sakura, Pokemon, Sailor Moon were pretty big. And then as an adult, my favorite kind of series have been Hannibal, the new Hannibal TV series, and Evangelion. For hobbies outside of Pokemon Go as well, I do a lot of gym stuff for my, like, you know, physical activity. I like to, you know, just get swole at the gym. But no, seriously, I just enjoy exercising at the gym. I also do pole dancing and acrobatics, like acro kind of stuff. So that's a very physically demanding sport. I don't fancy the, you know, prettier things. Like, if people can do that at pole, crazy, more power to you. But I more like the power moves and the strength-based moves and just crazy flips and tricks and things like that. I do really love scuba diving and snorkeling when I do get the chance to do those, and now that summer is rolling back around, I'm gonna have a lot more opportunities to do more snorkeling in the coming months. I've always loved swimming and being underwater. I think I started learning to swim when I was only a couple of months old, and swimming was kind of like my main competitive sport until the end of high school. I was very competitive with swimming as my main sport. In the last few years, I haven't swum that much, and I would definitely like to get back into it. I think just, you know, working an office job and things like that kind of take you away from some of those other kind of, you know, sport and physical activity things. So I want to get back into swimming. And speaking of summer, summer is my favorite season, so I'm very excited for the summer weather. I hate being cold with a passion. I love being warm and in the sun and just warming my reptilian skin. It's fantastic. Essentially, I think anything under 22 degrees Celsius is cold, which is, I know, realistically ridiculous, but I love being warm. Dungeons and Dragons is actually also something that is massive in my life at the moment. I've been playing through a campaign with my friends for over 4 years now. We've been going through our campaign. I play as a moon elf wizard, and it's been an incredibly fun campaign to play through as well. So D&D, absolutely love it. Favorite foods, I will eat literally anything. I will eat anything you put in front of me. I'm not a fussy eater at all. My favorites being, I suppose, Italian, Japanese, Polish food, Greek food, almost any food essentially. I have unfortunately developed a lactose intolerance over the last few years, which kind of sucks because my favorite food is cheese. So that's kind of like the duality of man. Loves cheese, lactose intolerant, like these two opposing forces. An unstoppable force meets an immovable object. I miss cheese. Come back. But yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. There were a lot of other really interesting questions that you guys put to me on Twitter and on the community tab, so I am going to go through and answer those questions in a separate video following up after this one. And of course, if you have other questions about me, chuck them in the comments and I'll try to answer them as best I can. If you do want to see more, you know, behind the scenes and things that aren't happening, you know, aren't exclusively Pokemon Go, check out the Instagram. I do a lot of other stuff on there as well. Twitter as well to stay up to date with day-to-day goings on. I have got a Discord where we all chat about mostly Pokemon, but we talk about, you know, health things, fitness, other people's streams and activities and video games in the Discord as well. If you want to rep the ZoëTwoDots merch, link is in the description for that as well, and pins, of course, the ZoëTwoDots pins are available there too. But yeah, thank you guys for listening and getting to know a bit more about me. I hope it's been mildly interesting, or maybe you've discovered that we have something else in common that you weren't aware of before. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful morning, noon, night, whatever time it is for you, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.